Hi, today's video is all about the Blazar Mantis 1.33x anamorphic lens. Hi, today's video is part 2 of my look at the Blazar Mantis anamorphic lenses. Today I'm on the 50mm with a 1.33x squeeze and an aperture of t2. This is my second video about the Blazar anamorphic lenses. Part 1 I mainly focused on the 35mm. Now on part 2 I'm going to look more at the 50mm and some other things I didn't include in the video. Like the 35mm, this is a T2 aperture and a squeeze of 1.33, or as I worked out, it's actually got a squeeze of 1.38, so it gives you a little bit more on the wide. Nice thing about these lenses, they're very natural looking, and you get nice skin tones, etc. The lens has an amber flare rather than the traditional blue flare like you find in a lot of anamorphic lenses. These have a natural or yellowy flare. It has the same focus throw of 180 degrees, a minimum focusing distance of 1.57 feet or 48 centimeters, 0.48 of a meter. I really enjoy using 50mm. In fact, here's the 50mm now. This is on the 50mm. Gives you an idea of the compression compared to the 35mm, but as you can see, my head's a little bit too big in the frame. So I'm going to switch it back to 35mm as it doesn't look quite right, my head being this close to the screen. And nobody wants to see that. It's a great lens for making things look more like a movie. So even the most mundane footage sometimes, you can add a little bit of extra drama with it. You get the lens flaring, though that's not very strong, just as it wasn't on the 35mm. For me, it's a bit of a negative on these lenses that when you do pan, it does go a bit weird on the edges, especially on the 35mm, less so on the 50mm though. Because it's a 1.33 squeeze rather than say a 1.5 squeeze or 2.0 squeeze, it's actually very easy to run and gun, even if you have a camera which doesn't have anamorphic features on it, such as the ZV-E1 I'm using now. Obviously with other cameras, the FX range on Sony or the Panasonic range, they have anamorphic features built into the cameras, so you can actually de-squeeze in the camera. But with 133, it's not as important as say a 1.5 or on my Samyang it's 1.7 squeeze. Having a monitor with a de-squeeze option for being able to judge the final image and also for getting a good idea of what you will be getting in frame. With 1.33 you probably could get away with it less, and it's also a little bit easier to focus with as well. Having said that, I do have a monitor and it zoomed in into my eyes just to make sure I do try and get some focus. You can be the judge of whether I've done it or not. Just like the 35mm I have here, I've chosen to have E mount on here, though you can choose PL mount, etc. This has all gone over in the first part of the video, but just to recap, the reason why I chose E mount is much lighter. It's got the same feeling focus and the same feeling aperture, which is declicked, obviously, as it's more of a cinema lens. Something you can do with this is actually shim the lens. So when you buy the lens, you get these with it. These are shims. Sorry about the rattling. So I have the 50mm here, I actually labelled them, and the 35mm here, but they're the same thing in both packages. Basically they're gaskets you can put onto the back of the lens. By putting these gaskets on, or shims, you can make sure they're focused better. Print off this shim chart and then you can check to see how it's in focus. That tells me whether it's shim properly or whether I need to add or subtract a shim from the lens. So shimming this lens is not too bad. You just unscrew these screws at the back, you'll take the back pane off, and then you can put the shim in and then use the chart with the measurement at the bottom to see how much you would shim it by. I'm lazy, I haven't done this. I've found them pretty much out of the box, they've worked pretty well, I haven't had no problem. If I did change it to another mount, such as PL mount, I could then shim it. Blazar put a very good video on how to do this and how it works. As both lenses are a very similar weight, the ones I've used so far, the 35 and the 50mm, it's great fun for running and gunning. Using this around Japan, I've used these walking around London as well, and they don't really stand out like some anamorphic lenses do. Some anamorphic lenses really stand out because they're so big and bulky. These are quite a bit smaller, and they've got the 77mm filter thread, so it's very easy to put filters on there, such as NDs as well. If I could change anything on these lenses, what I've seen so far, some of the warping at the edges, I would change that a little bit. You don't really notice it unless you're panning or somebody's walking into the side of the scene, and even then it's not too bad. I'd also change the flaring. I prefer to have blue flares, but that's just a personal thing, and that's growing up on movies like Star Wars. On the other hand, the natural flares do look really, really good. They're really slight and not overpronounced. As you can see here, when I was aiming these cars, I didn't get hardly any flares at all, though you do see some Sunstar looking streaks on it when you look at the headlights. But then when I put it to a light here, and it was a strong light, very little flaring here as well. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a couple of examples, one now using my iPhone and another one using a very strong torch, and you can see the amount of flaring you get. So it's got the same kind of distortion, it's barrel distortion rather than pincushion distortion. Barrel distortion is much more desirable because that's what people are used to in the movies. And I do believe these do give a very nice kind of movie style look. They're not quite up to my favourite anamorphic lenses, which are Panavision C-series lenses, the ones I could never get a hold of because you can't buy them for a start. But these give me a nice budget version. As you can see here, the focus breathing is pretty well controlled. I think it's sharp enough. I know some anamorphic lenses can get very soft. These aren't. These are just the right sharpness in my opinion, especially something like the Sony with quite a sharp sensor compared to old film. I think it does give a very nice look. So these lenses, they kind of soften it just enough, but still sharp enough to be very, very good. I mean, you can still see the wrinkles around my eyes. That was my look at the Blazar Mantis 50mm anamorphic lens with a 1.33x squeeze that really translates to 1.38x squeeze and a T2 aperture. If you've got any questions, put them in the comment section below. It's good to hear what other people think as well and how other people use these, so please put a comment in there. I'd be very interested to hear what people watching this video would use a lens like this for. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you in my next one. Thank you. Bye bye.